But right now we're going to dive into the sports book. But first things first here, what's the game plan? What's the game plan for the Celtics to avoid elimination, Nick? And why is it don't turn the ball over and make your freaking free throws?
Yeah, well, the turnovers are what I was going to hit on first. I mean, for one, you can't commit 18 turnovers, and you also can't only force 6 turnovers, especially if you're going to commit 18 on your end. I think that was the biggest story coming out of Game 5, and that's why Golden State was able to survive just a terrible game from Stephen Curry. Coming out of Game 4, we're thinking, man, Steph might have to score 40 points every single game the rest of the way if Golden State's going to win this series. And then he comes out and has maybe his worst finals game ever, and Golden State still wins by 10. I think that's what's really devastating if you're the Boston Celtics. I don't think Boston's going to lay down. I don't think they're going to give up hope, but losing that game in that fashion, only scoring 94 points on a night when Stephen Curry was just ineffective, I think the lesson learned there is Steph's going to be better. Clay will probably even be better in Game 6. You cannot let someone like Andrew Wiggins be by far the best player in an NBA Finals game that includes Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, so Chinmay, what do you think tonight? What is the game plan for the Celtics? How do they avoid elimination? Is it more of like their players stepping up or maybe shutting down those role players, as Nick mentioned, guys like Wiggins on Golden State?
Ultimately, it's a make or miss league, and Boston just needs to start making three-point shots. Derek White, I think, was 0 for 3 from behind the arc. Jaylen Brown, 0 for 5. You just can't have that in an NBA Finals game against this team. And I think it's that simple, that Boston starts making perimeter shots and the game starts condensing a little bit for them, because it can't just be as simple as drive more to the right side versus the left side for Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart. I mean, I think that's a ridiculous thing to say, that every time Boston drives to the left, they struggle, versus every time they drive to the right, it's an automatic bucket. So I think Tatum needs to play more efficiently, obviously, but the perimeter players need to start hitting perimeter shots. And, Horford has slipped off since his Game 1 showing, but Derek White needs to step up. Jaylen Brown needs to step up. I think Marcus Smart hit a few shots in Game 5. He needs to keep that going, and maybe Horford hits a couple. Grant Williams gets some more minutes in there. Boston just needs to hit more three-pointers, because right now it looks like in the half court they're really struggling to get consistent production from their offense. So I think if they can get perimeter shots going, that'll really help them when it comes to closing this game out at home.
Flopping less would also help Marcus Smart. It's been a series of matchups, guys. Steph outscoring Tatum. Wiggins, as we've mentioned already, coming up big on the glass. On the DK Sportsbook, there's head-to-head markets for points, rebounds, and assists. So what's a matchup you're looking at for tonight in Game 6, Chinmay?
I think there's two value matchups that you can really get here. Plus money, Jason Tatum ahead of Stephen Curry for points. I think that's a really good one. And then Klay Thompson, I think he's matched up on Jaylen Brown. Brown was really inefficient in Game 5. And as we know, Game 6 Klay is a huge narrative for NBA fans. So I think Game 6 Klay does show up to a certain extent and gets ahead of Jaylen Brown. And give me Jason Tatum ahead of Stephen Curry, especially if it's at plus money.
All right, what do you like here, Nick?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's not a Andrew Wiggins versus Wilt Chamberlain rebounds head-to-head available tonight. But I think Chinmay's right on Klay Thompson. That's the one, I think, value-wise, that jumped out to me. I mean, yes, chances are Jaylen Brown probably scores more points than Klay Thompson. There's a reason. It's kind of I'm going to use the word whopping minus 255 here. But getting Klay at plus 200, to me, this should be a little more close to even. Yeah, I know Jaylen Brown's a little more reliable, a little more of a dominant ball-handling type, but Game 6 Klay, I mean, if you think Klay's going to hit 4 or 5 threes in this game, which I think you do, you're already at 15 points right there. He's been getting to the line at a decent clip in the playoffs. Can still hit mid-rangers every now and then, still gets to the rack. And Jaylen Brown, I think he's been the Celtics' best player and most reliable scorer in this series. He's still Jaylen Brown at the end of the day. He's definitively a number 2 guy. I don't think he's quite on that level of someone who you can say, yep, we'll just count on him for 25 plus every single game in the finals. He still has those letdown games every now and then.
All right, let's go to a player prop, or potentially here a player special you like on the DK Sportsbook tonight, Nick?
I love these player specials on DK, and I love that they organize them by odds. You could just keep scrolling down and see what's more and more unlikely. But I think I gotta ride Klay Thompson. I think you can pretty much build any kind of special prop that you want involving Klay or even Steph and Klay. You could go Klay and Steph to each have at least 15 points in the first half. That's 5-1. You can have Curry to have at least 20 points in the first half. That's also 5-1. Klay, 4 made threes in the first half, plus 550. Like I said, the further you scroll down, the more value you're looking at. One that I don't think is like that unlikely, and it's sitting at 20-1. Steph Curry to score 20 points and have at least 4 assists in the first half. If we're expecting a major bounce back Steph game after that 0 of 9 performance in Game 5, if he comes out and looks like the Steph from Game 1, I think that's very possible.
All right, Chinmay, talk to me here, dude.
I'm not going to go quite as off the reservation as Nick scrolling down in the player specials, but I do like Klay Thompson over 3.5 3-pointers. He's hit this over in each of the last 3 games. Game 6 narrative, he might feed into it a little bit, but he's also playing about 40 minutes in each game. So the playing time is going to be there, and the shots are going to start falling, or they have been falling at least over the last 3 games. And I also think Jason Tatum over 27.5 points. He needs to have a big showing at home, especially after all the talk surrounding his performances over the last 2 games on the turnover front. So I think Tatum over on the points and Klay Thompson over on the 3-pointers made are 2 good bets for tonight on the player prop side.
Well, Chinmay, speaking of the last 2 games, they have both gone under. So the line right now in the DK Sportsbook currently sitting at 210. So if it closes at this number, it would be the lowest total in this series thus far. How are you feeling about the total?
It really depends on who you think is going to win the game, because the Celtics have gone over in both wins that they've had, and the Warriors have gone under in all 3 of the wins that they've had. So this really depends on who you think is going to come out and win this game. And I'm going to take the over on this one. It is starting to creep a little lower than some of the totals in the previous games. And if it does close at this, it'll be the lowest total. So I'm going to take the over for now. And I think really the way to bet this is who you think is going to win this game.
All right, Nick, how do you feel here, man? Because we already talked about the Celtics squandering too many of those freebies from the line, and it's going to be physical. Maybe the refs get a little more involved tonight, clock stopping, that kind of stuff. You want the over?
Chinmay is spot on about, kind of game flow. If you think Boston's going to win, history suggests that this game will go over. The games that they've won in this series, they've shot the ball pretty efficiently. They've hit a bunch of threes. In the games that they've lost, they haven't even gotten to 100 points in any of those 3 games. So I think Boston's going to win at home, so I'm going to take the over, but I don't feel great about it. I usually like betting unders as the series goes along. A lot of the kind of matchup issues that you see early on in a series, for example, letting Steph Curry hit 6 wide open threes in the first quarter of Game 1, like things like that get tightened up as the series goes along. Rotations are shortened. All the tweaks that you can make when you're playing a team for the 6th time in a week and a half. All those things tighten up, and that usually leads to lower scoring games. You also look at the pace, which is for the series, 95.1. That would be the lowest pace. Like no team played at a pace slower than that during the regular season. So that's about what you expect at this point in the playoffs. Every possession matters. And as the series goes along, you tend to see these games played more slowly and more slowly. But I do think Boston bounces back. I think we see one of those kind of barrage nights from 3 where they hit 15, 16, 17 threes. And that's probably enough to push this one just over. Okay, so then, Nick, you like the Celtics covering 4 points at home tonight and forcing a Game 7? Yeah, I do. You can take them with the points. You can take the money line. Not a massive difference. And every game in this series, like has been the theme of the entire playoffs, it's kind of been a blowout. Even the games that have felt close have always found a way to end, within 8 to 12 points. So I don't think this is going to come down to a buzzer beater necessarily, but I think we get a bounce back from Boston. For the first time all playoffs, they lost after a loss in Game 5. I think they kind of get back on that trend, and we get a Game 7 Sunday night. All right, Chinmay. Boston has been the best bounce back team in the NBA this season until Game 5.
Yeah, and you kind of feel like the Warriors have figured out the Celtics a little bit. This does feel a lot like that 2015 finals matchup where the Warriors went down to the Cavs 2-1 and then won 3 straight and then clinched that finals on the road. However, I do think that this Boston team has shown so much resilience over the course of the regular season, and in this postseason, they were down 3-2 to the Bucks and came out with an all-time performance in Game 6 of that series. So I'm going to take the Celtics here. And of course, as Nick mentioned, every game of this series has ended up being a blowout. It hasn't been as close as some of these spreads have opened up at. So I'm going to take Celtics to cover tonight, and I think they do force a Game 7.